Hello everyone, this is Claudia and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to talk about this piece that I made. This is a watercolor illustration and it's a bit of a collaboration between me and my husband. We were talking about this piece for a long time and I actually didn't have the time to draw it, and I'm not very good at drawing, so I have to admit. So we were making some sketches together, and then he went on and actually did this piece for me, the line art. He did it, of course, in Illustrator. He's very good at that. And the piece is a little bit kind of a bookstore front idea, and I transferred it to some of my very good paper. So I have very nice paper, the Arches hot press, and I really want to try it. I actually finally ended up buying and purchasing this paper because I really don't like my Canson one. The water doesn't, and the colors don't look as nice. Because I use this kind of more expensive paper, I thought I'm gonna use also my more expensive watercolors, which are current at the moment when I was shooting this, where I only had some Daniel Smith, and I only had the basic Daniel Smith set and the basic Primatech, so basically in total 12 colors. So I had a limited palette to work with, but in the end, I made it work, and I actually did the highlights with the Zik markers in the end, because yeah, I really need some colors. And the way I approached this is I actually mixed a lot of the colors myself, and I needed a lot of browns and a lot of different browns, and I was trying this glazing technique where I would put really light layers of color, and then I would wait for it to dry, and then I'll put some more layers of color. So it took a long time. Actually, I think I have footage of about 9 hours of work. I had to cut a lot of things, and I had to cut also the beginning where I actually transferred the image, because like I said, this was in Illustrator done. So I used my light box to transfer it to the paper with the micron pen, because micron pens are high vol and also waterproof, so they're kind of ideal for working with a watercolor. So only that part I think took about an hour. There's a lot of detail in this picture, but I actually didn't really want to talk about the process itself. I mean, the process is quite simple. I do lots of glazes and I build up the color, but I wanted to talk more about the meaning. What does it mean for me, this bookstore, and why did I choose this one? So it has quite a personal meaning, and I wanted for a long time to do this, and it's kind of in memory of my uncle. There's a big reason why I was kind of absent last year, partially because we moved to a new place, and we had to kind of rebuild everything inside. So I didn't really have a craft room till maybe a few months ago. But another reason is kind of several of my family members died last year, and it was quite a unexpected thing. And one of them was my uncle, who was kind of a role model for me. That's why you see a little bit later on, you'll see that you have this number 57 on the bookstore, and it's actually his birth year of birth. And the reason why this is about my uncle, because it's a bookstore, and actually he's the one that, since I was very young, he's the one that encouraged me and helped me to study. His let's say mantra was that me and also my two cousins, we should study a lot, and so that we don't end up doing lots of manual work like he does. He was working with a lot of metal, making pieces for big ships, like in a shipyard where you make the propellers and stuff. So he was very good at that. But his idea was, well, if you guys are going to study a lot, and if you're going to go to college like he didn't, then you're going to, you know, have a very good job and paid job, so you know you can have a lot more opportunities. So his idea was that we have to study. So most of the time I was in high school, like basically every weekend I was going to my uncle's place, and I was studying together with my cousins and with him. So he would study side by side with us, he would do the homework with all of us, all three of us, and you know, listen to us say the lessons and do math problems and physics and everything with us. And he's the one that teach me how to be a software engineer. He actually learned programming just for me and my cousin, to teach us how to program. And he was doing courses in the evening for us. He was learning in the evening how to work with computers and so on, and then teaching us at home. So for me, he was the role model. He never gave up, and he was studying so hard, and you know, coming home from work and then still studying and learning and doing things. So that's the reason I think I am where I am today, and this was for him. He loved books. He was going to the library, I think, every week. He was reading. He liked science fiction books, and he liked basically to study. He started studying German when he was like in his 40s or something, just because he wanted to study German. He knew a lot of French and stuff, but he was like, okay, there's a new language. And another funny story was when I moved here to the Netherlands. I have the Dutch part of the family, but I was complaining to him that, you know, Dutch is very hard, and I was like, oh, Dutch is so hard, and it's so different from my own language, and it's very hard to learn it. So I mainly speak in English here. And what he did was, well, without telling me, of course, he was supposed to come visit me in like 3 months, and in 3 months he learned Dutch, and he came here and he was speaking Dutch with all my Dutch family. That made me so embarrassed, and he was telling me like, okay, if I could learn in 3 months Dutch, and I'm like almost 60, for sure, you being like very young, you can learn much better than me. So that made me actually go and learn Dutch and study and go to the university and do some courses. And he was like that. He was kind of inspiring you and making you, in parts, making you ashamed that you were complaining about studying and working. So I'll always remember him, and this piece was for him, you know, because this is how I will always remember him, studying and with books in his hand, and always saying, you know, studying is good, going to college, going to university is good. Make a career for yourself, and you know, you're always going to have your hobbies and whatever you do, but first thing first, always make sure you have enough money to pay your bills, money to put on the table, and the rest, you know, the rest will come. He was also very big on, he always wanted to travel, so he was very happy when he came here to visit us. And yeah, he taught me a lot. So that's why this piece is so important for me. It took me a while till I was able to do the voiceover for this, because yeah, it's quite, sometimes can be quite emotional. But yeah, mainly this is how I will always remember him. And when you're doing your own illustrations and your own artwork, I think the illustrations are much more powerful if it actually is something that means to you more than just an illustration. And maybe I'm always puzzled by artists when they take commissions, or I don't take commissions or anything to do something for somebody else, but I'm always amazed how they can do something for somebody else, because it's not something for them, but they have to do something for somebody else, and they have to somehow pull ideas from their past and that matches that person's wishes. So I find that very hard to actually work for somebody else, because I can only somehow draw from my own experiences, and you know, when I make something, I make something that means something for me, and not necessarily, I don't think this would necessarily mean something for somebody else. Maybe other people have a different idea of what, you know, bookstore is, and they have different memories. So yeah, I'm quite amazed on some of the artists that they can do that, and I'm hoping that maybe when I will get better, you know, this part will also get better. By this time, I think we've talked enough about the sad parts, and we can talk a little bit more about the piece. I actually made a lot of layers, and I kept building up the brown color, and it took a while till I got to the shade that I needed. I always said that, well, I need to learn this glazing technique and all this, and I think it requires quite a lot of patience, because I think I put around 6 or 7 layers, and at one point, after about 6 hours of work, I was really tired of it. I was really like, okay, I really need to get to the color that I want, and I need to get to the color faster, because this is this is a very big piece, and it has a lot of details in it, and every little detail means a little something, and you know, the kitty cat also means a lot of things, and all the books, and you have a lot of tiny little elements like some mice and all those little things, but building up the color was a struggle. And you know, basically that means that I have very good watercolors because they're very transparent, but on the other side, I think I still need to learn a lot about the values and how I can, you know, get there faster, because I do not think I always have 9 hours of continuous time to work on a piece, since I also go to work. So this one I usually would do it in the weekend. But next time I think I'll do it a little bit different. What I like about this paper, as opposed to the other papers, although the other papers that I usually use also are 300 grams and they're watercolor papers, I think on this type of paper, because it's so smooth and so nice, it doesn't warp at all. So I was amazed of how much water and how many layers I put, it doesn't warp. But another point is, you can pretty much, if you make a mistake, scrub the watercolor out. So if you come immediately with a tissue paper and you dab it, you know, if you made a mistake, you can fix it. So I think maybe that's one of the main differences between student grade watercolor and really artist grade watercolor paper, and I can see why they would cost more. I mean, these paper packs usually are quite expensive, from, you know, 30 euros, 40 euros upwards, but I can see why. I mean, if I would have done this piece on my usual Canson paper, although it's very thick and maybe it doesn't warp as much, I would not be able to fix some of the things I fixed in this painting as easily as I did in here. So I think I'm going to use much more on this paper from now on for my study, although sometimes I do like, oh no, I paid so much on this paper, I need to hoard it somehow or not use it as much. But I think if I really want to improve my coloring, I need to use the proper paper. And I know some people are on the impression that you don't really need expensive things, and that is true if you're just starting. But if you want to make more complicated pieces like this one, I think really the paper really matters, and you know, more expensive paper really matter. I don't think you would get the same effect on a normal student grade paper or Like that's why I didn't want to use also my other watercolors. They are nice colors like the Gansai and the koi watercolors, but they're very chalky. So I wouldn't have been able to do so many layers like this because they're not so transparent. They're like in 2 layers I would have finished, and you know, maybe that would have saved me a lot of time, but I wouldn't have learned about this glazing technique and done it properly. One thing I noticed that I need to learn more, for example, in this part when I'm doing the windows, I think I need to learn how to draw glass, or not draw ink glass. I was having this idea that I will do some blue, and then I'll paint with more darker blue the parts where I think, you know, the sun comes, and that will signify that the sun is falling onto the glass, and you have the sun rays. But what I noticed is that it looks like the glass is on the inside and not on the outside of the bookshelf. And I think my mistake was that I should have inked all of the elements in the bookshelf with the blue, and then make them pop with color, instead of doing the elements like the books and everything else separate, because that makes them pop too much, and that makes them look like this bookstore doesn't really have windows, or has windows but only on the inside. I hope you'll understand what I mean. Yeah, having so many elements in one paper can be time consuming, can be especially the small ones, because you have to learn how to paint on the outside. That's maybe the reason why I'm also using this brush. So this is kind of a horse brush. I will link to it in the description below. And there's a difference between the horse and the squirrel. The squirrel will not retain its shape, so when you start painting it is also a point and everything, but then you always have to wet it and make it into a point again. But the horse hairs are more stiff, so even if you are painting, let's say you do one stroke, then it will turn back automatically to the previous shape, which is the pointy one. So it works faster. But the difference with the squirrel one, for example, if you have the silver brushes, the black velvet ones, those ones hold much more water than these ones would. So, you know, I prefer these ones because I like it to retain its form, and I don't mind if I always have to dip it in the water. Once I finished a little bit, I was thinking it looks a little bit flat, so by the end of it, in order to speed up the process, and because I didn't think with my limited palette I will actually manage to make all the colors that I want. I needed lots of pinks and lots of, you know, more nicer greens, and it's very hard to do with that limited palette, and I wanted some more shadows. So I decided to take my watercolor markers. I did learn from a previous project that the watercolor markers are not going to be so light fast like the watercolors. So at the end of the process, I actually sprayed it with several coats of the watercolor glazing. There's like a tiny plastic film that you spray on top, and that protects the colors from the suns and makes sure that the colors don't fade as fast as normal. Like watercolors usually fade much faster. If you have acrylic, those ones don't fade as much, and you know, acrylics or oil painting, they tend to have a very long dry time. There's still some oil paintings that are made 100 years ago that are not dry yet. So, but the watercolors, once they dry and the sun hits them, and as in any house you have quite some sun, they will fade. So the best thing to do is to protect them somehow, so at least that they will last you quite some years. But I do think it was this point when I decided that I'm going to make my own watercolor palette, and I'm going to order a lot of watercolors, because I realized I was missing a lot of colors. I was missing the grays, and I always have trouble mixing grays, and I was missing lots of the nice greens and pinks and such. When I started doing the inside of the bookcase, I was doing basically the same color everywhere where I thought it would. I didn't change the marker color. I first did all the books that had green, and then all the books that had pink, and so on and so forth, because that was easier than just going back and forward from color to color. I went in actually on all of the, at the end, on all of the bricks, and I really make them pop with lots of orange and other more darker browns. That worked just fine. So this, I could say this is kind of a hybrid watercolor piece, but it still is hang in my living room, and it's always going to be there because it's always going to remind me of my uncle. So I'm planning to actually make kind of a series. I'm going to make much more of this kind of arts. My husband is actually quite happy that he doesn't have to do the coloring, because he doesn't really particularly like that. He likes the drawing part, so I made a deal with him that he can draw things for me, whatever he wants, like castles and steampunk cities and all that stuff, and I'm going to color them. Whether I'm going to color them with my watercolors or my colored pencil or what other medium I choose to, it's going to be a decision I'm going to make that time. But most of my artworks are going to be in a collaboration with him, and it's really nice because anyway he's an illustrator, so he does that normally for a living. He has way much time to do illustrations than me, and yeah, he's always doing the grayscale, so he's very good with shadows and all that stuff, but he likes mostly to do it with pencil and like black and white kind of ones. And he said he's always surprised to see how the picture changes, because he did the same thing like I'm showing here, but with grays and blacks and whites, and like it really gives a different atmosphere when you do it with colors. I think I could have even gone further, but sometimes you have to stop and say, okay, enough is enough. Definitely I learned a lot doing this piece, and I really enjoyed it. And you know, this is like, yeah, the first collaboration I ever have with my husband, so yay. That's good. Now if you want to see more videos, you know, please click the subscribe button. If you want to learn more, check out my blog post. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on my next video. Goodbye.